Okay, can you hear me now? I've started. Hi, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Oh, lovely. Okay, sorry about that, folks. I know it's the end of the day, and I wanted to get started promptly. I just want to thank you for spending the end of your day with me and learning about the QA requirements for EPA. I'm going to share my screen, and while I'm getting that set up, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Audrey. You all know me as Audrey Johnson. My computer is named with my married name. But I am the manager of the Quality Assurance Branch at EPA Region 9. And I'm looking forward to presenting some of the new, and if you could see me, you would see my hands in quotes, doing the quote thing, the new quality assurance requirements. So while I get my screen up and shared, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. And I'm going to have you go ahead and start answering, if you wouldn't mind.
And Audrey, I was wondering, do you want questions to be asked like during the session, or save the questions for the end?
Go ahead and have people type them into the chat. I'm able to see the chat box, and then I'll answer. How does that sound?
Oh, great. Sounds good.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I've given you guys a couple minutes. It looks like, can you guys actually see the results that are coming in? Mark, you want to let me know?
It's loading.
So I was just curious about whether or not any of you, and I'm sure most of you are, but it looks like it's a pretty even split, 30%, 30%, and 30%. So yes, some people are currently writing a new or updating a QA plan. No, we got 31% that say that they're not working on a QA plan currently, and then some that will begin soon. So I welcome you all, and let's go ahead and launch into this presentation. Okay, so the new quality system requirements. So I'm going to kind of go through a variety of topics. This is the road we'll head down during this presentation. First, we're kind of going to go over the history of the QA requirements. Next, we're actually going to go through CIO 2105, which is the newly refurbished, updated, and finalized quality directives. And that includes both a policy and procedure. I'm going to talk about some of the big changes that are identified within that document and within our agency requirements. I'm going to go over kind of what's going to be happening next, because once you update those requirements, there's kind of a domino effect of all the various guidances and everything that we have out and available to you in the agency currently that are going to be updated. And then I'm also going to kind of share with you how you can participate and be involved in kind of the next steps. And then we can go over questions and answers. But certainly, if you have any questions during this presentation, I am able to see the chat box. So please feel free to write in the chat, and I will go ahead on and take a look at that. Okay. Ooh, Jerry, thank you. We have audio. I love that. Okay. So next slide. So first, the history. So essentially, let's look at the cycle over on the right-hand side. So in 1979, EPA mandated quality assurance for all extramural agreements. Extramural agreements include grants, contracts, and cooperative agreements. Those mandates were also put as requirements on any EPA personnel that were using EPA funds to go out and do investigations, field work, any kind of monitoring and collection of environmental data to make decisions. In 1984 was the first time we had the quality order and manual. 1995, we were required to actually update that manual to use consensus standards. In 2000, the actual quality order and manual became what we now know as CIO 2105. 17 years later, we actually got an approval to updating CIO 2105, and it became 2106, which caused a lot of confusion because both 2106 and 2105 were running concurrently and had some conflicting information. In 2020, just a year ago, there was an OIG audit that forced us to actually identify the need to review all the quality directives and guidance. And finally, in 2021, this year in March, we do have an updated quality policy and procedure. Now, obviously, a document that's been sitting around here, we tell you guys that you have to update your QAPs every 5 years. Here, we hadn't even updated our requirements around those around those QA policies for 20 years. So certainly that was a trigger that we obviously needed to do something. In addition, we wanted to make sure that we were consistent with the latest edition of the consensus standard. There were also some regulatory references for grants that changed in 2014. And then another kind of impetus for setting up this policy and procedure was to incorporate some of that relevant information that had been a part of 2106 and make sure that it was a part of the updated policy and procedure that everybody would follow. So this is where we are now is, March 2021, brand new quality policy and procedure that we lovingly call the directives. Okay, so the QA directives. The purpose is to define the policy and program requirements for EPA organizations. It also defines the policy and program for non-EPA organizations, again, that have any QA written into an extramural agreement. So if you have a grant, if you are a contractor, if you have a cooperative agreement with EPA and you are doing any kind of environmental measurement out and making decisions based upon data that you have collected, you must have at least a quality assurance project plan. What's nice about these QA directives that I don't think you'll see much change in Region 9 is that it reinforced that EPA's decentralized quality program throughout the agency was going to be upheld. And so essentially what that means is each of the EPA regions, along with the national program offices, have to develop a quality management plan. So it basically discusses how we manage our quality system within the region. And that details the decisions that we'll be making. I update, it is part of my role as the regional quality assurance manager is to write and update that QMP every 5 years. I just updated it 2 years ago in 2019. The next time it will come up to be revised is 2023, 2024, right? Because it was right there at the end of the year. And so because we have an approved QMP that basically follows the status quo, so my quality management system has not changed drastically in the last few years since I updated that quality management plan. the way that we implement our quality program, which includes reviewing and approving your QAPs, there shouldn't be too many changes that will impact the states and tribes. So that's a plus for us. The other plus for us is that the graded approach will continue. So essentially what happens is a graded approach means the quality systems for different organizations and programs will vary according to the objectives and needs of the organization. For example, the quality practices needed in a research program are very different from those in a regulatory compliance program, and very different from those who are, collecting monitoring information or monitoring data on an informational basis. So the graded approach is something that we use where we determine whether or not, based upon your project and your goals, while we're reviewing your QAP, whether or not the information that you've provided makes sense, one, to meet the objectives of your goal of your project, and two, also meets agency requirements. Each region within our quality management plan actually describes how the graded approach is implemented in their EPA approved QMP. So I discuss what the graded approach looks like to me. And that is approved by our National Program Office. So this is especially important because EPA, under our quality directives, requires that recipients of funds for work, so again, this includes internal colleagues and external partners, it requires two forms of documentation. Unless we define under the graded approach that those two documents aren't value added to your program. So the two forms of documentation are the quality management plan, which some of you may have seen if you are one of the tribal PQAOs. That is a requirement. It's a regulatory requirement under the Clean Air Act. If you are not, let's say, a tribe that has been identified as a PQAO, a primary quality assurance organization, and you're collecting data that is informational to you that you want to share with your community, a quality management plan is not required in Region 9. However, the foundational document that I need to see in most of the tribal grants that come across my desk is a quality assurance project plan. And that is a documentation of the actual application of quality assurance and the quality control activities about a specific effort. And usually that specific effort has to do with one of our media programs. It may be Clean Water Act 106, it may be Non-Point Source 319, it may be Clean Air Act 105 funds. It's all of those specific grant programs that identify most of the time that you need a QAP because you will be doing some sort of environmental information collection. So again, what I want to make sure that people take away from this particular presentation is, one, quality management plans are not required unless it is a statutory requirement. And two, quality assurance project plans were the most likely documentation that you will have to apply under an EPA grant. So Mervin, I see your question. Will there be scientific standards as a part of the requirements? And how can tribes ensure that they will or can comply? There are no scientific standards as a part of the requirements other than, following method SOPs, ensuring that you have a certified lab. But other than that, the basic underpinning of a QAP that is approved by EPA is ensuring that your data quality objectives are defined. You have a monitoring design that supports those data quality objectives. You have a certified lab that will be providing the analysis, and that you have some way of analyzing that data and making decisions about that data and being able to describe that. There are no specific scientific standards that need to be complied with regarding how a QAP is produced and then approved, or if there is something missing, we'll send you back in the comments. Does that make sense, Mervin? I hope so. If it doesn't, let me know or send me another question. Okay, on to the next slide. So let's move to the changes. I love this picture. This is Andy Linkoff from the Region 9 lab. He retired this year, but I'm sure many of you have looked at our documents and done the same face. Or I know people who have gotten very frustrated and thrown it on the desk and walked away. And I don't blame you. It can be very overwhelming if this is the first time you've ever seen a QAP or ever sat down to write a QAP. I think the most important thing when you start writing a QAP is to have an example, and hopefully most of the tribes within Region 9 that we've worked with have written one before, is to see something in front of them that helps them kind of detail out how to plan out their project. The crazy thing about the new QA directives, and many of you may have seen them when we sent them out for state and tribal review. I believe that was sometime November of 2019 or so. Anyways, it was a very different format than what you have seen other EPA program documents look like. First of all, the one thing that even confused me is there's actually two documents that make up the quality assurance directives. There's the policy document and the procedure document. The policy document actually establishes the policy and program requirements for the preparation and implementation of the overall agency's quality program. And then the procedure document actually goes into the nitty gritties and establishes kind of the management principles and responsibilities. So the procedure document the policy document is almost like the legalese about what the quality program looks like. The procedure document is essentially how are we going to get things done. And the reason that the procedure document was, developed was to ensure that agency environmental information and technology operations, services, products, everything meet the agency quality requirements. They're also sufficient for their intended use, and they support EPA's mission to protect human health in the environment. So remember, these directives aren't only directives to you around the quality assurance requirements. They're very much directed to me and the quality assurance staff and the EPA agency and the program managers of the agency to ensure that we are following the requirements as listed. Another major change, and I think this is the biggest change that all of you would be experiencing, especially if you've been in the QA world for a while, is there is a new definition called environmental information. And so it's no longer environmental measurements. That's what we were used to. Now it's called environmental information. And those collections are any measurements or information that describe an environmental process, location, or condition, ecological or health effects and consequences. Sorry, it's the end of the day. Or the performance of environmental technology. So that's a big one. So environmental information collections also include both primary data and secondary or existing data. So primary data is that actual information that you collect directly from measurements. So when you go out into the field, when you have a probe that is constantly sending data, though that is considered primary data. Secondary data is literature studies, industry surveys, any kind of models that have been applied, databases, information systems. So I think where this is applied most is probably when most of the tribes are writing their non-point source assessment report and management plan and don't necessarily have a lot of, let's say, Clean Water Act 106 data. They can use literature that has been described or has been developed by, like, let's say, U.S. Fish and Wildlife nearby, or they can look at models that have been developed, like EPA's clean water model that you can use, or have like searched for databases in, like, let's say, California, the CDEX. So what tribes within that program do, or what grantees can do, is use the information from all of those, various, existing data, literature, models, databases, and they can determine in their non-point source assessment report in their first year, let's say, implementing that program, they can use that data to determine where they want to monitor, what constituents they want to monitor for, can identify maybe where runoff may occur, or identify sources based upon literature. If you are doing that, you now need to include that in a QAP. So this is, I feel like, the biggest point that I need most people to get, again, from this presentation, is really think about the planning for your project as you're updating, reviewing, or writing a QAP, and really think about all the information that you are collecting in order to develop kind of your data quality objectives and move forward in your actual, measurements that you're going to be taking out in the field. Because you are going to have to list every single one of those pieces in your QAP, how they relate to your project, what information you're taking, and how they're going to be integrated in the decisions that you're making at the end of, your collections. Any questions about that before I move on? I'm going to provide you some examples on the next slide. I don't see anything popping up in the chat, so I'm going to move on. So here are some examples, and some of these will look very, very familiar to you. Establishing ambient conditions in air, water, all of the media programs that, I've listed a little bit during this talk. Here's a new one: mapping environmental processes and conditions, or human health risk data. So if you actually use or develop a GIS system to map out areas of concern, you need to write a QAP, or you need to include that piece of information in an existing QAP in order to meet this definition of environmental information. Another example is characterizing and or evaluating the states and or conditions of environmental or ecological systems to human populations. And then, characterizing or evaluating chemical, biological, physical, or radioactive constituents in the environmental and ecological systems. So I will let you know, I have uploaded this presentation as part of the documents for this breakout session. And so you can go back to this and take a look at this when you get home, because I'm sure you guys have taken in a lot of information today. And I know this is hard to kind of hang on here at the end of the day. Okay. The other major change is that there's going to be consistent language that is available for regions' use around a term and condition for grant awards. Now, in Region 9, this isn't a new thing. We've always provided QA terms and conditions, and in fact have individualized QA terms and conditions based upon what is going on within a current grant, maybe late QAPs, like a QAP was never written in a 5-year grant and it should have been. And so what happened is this is a direct a result of a 2018 meeting that we had back in, I believe it was in DC. Yes, in DC, with that included, it was a collaborative meeting between EPA states and tribes. And in fact, I see Lisa just put that in just put something in the chat, and Lisa was there as well. But there was an inconsistency across all regions providing terms and conditions. One thing that I will say to this particular point is EQMD, who is my national program manager, it's who I look to. It's kind of like OW for office or for the water division, has developed recommended language. That means it does not need to be used, which means that I will have a little bit of ability to still individualize terms and conditions. I think the number one thing I want to make you aware of is, even though there is recommended language, it is going to be necessary for every region to provide QA terms and conditions into a grant award if there is any kind of environmental information collection going on, which means that this becomes a grant enforceable action. So we need to make sure that if you are doing that, if you are doing any kind of environmental information, you do need to have a QAP, you do need to submit it to EPA, and you do need to have it approved prior to doing any kind of data collection. I'm going to pause there and see if anybody has any questions. Again, this isn't anything new for Region 9. It's going to be consistent across all regions, and regions will determine what part of the language they will be using based upon the recommended language that EQMD has developed. I think that's pretty much it that I want to say about this, and I don't see any other questions, so I'll move on. I have the pictures of the dominoes here because, like I said, as the document, the QA directives, after 20 years sitting kind of dormant, and us taking the time to update them and finalize them this year, it will cause a domino effect in that we will have a bunch of guidance that will need to be updated as well. Many of you are used to seeing the various QAP templates. Maybe you know of the R2, which is the QMP guidance. R5 is the QAP guidance. All of those right now, there's a major undertaking by the agency to update those documents at the moment. And I believe it's Heidi, just put in a question. If you already have a QAP, but it needs to be updated, do you have to stop data collection until the new one is accepted? That is an excellent question. And the answer is no. You can continue to collect data under your currently approved QAP until a new one is identified. You cannot do new monitoring. So if you're adding new monitoring or adding new locations or any of that, you cannot go to those locations until the new information is in a QAP and has been approved by EPA. Let's see, Eddie, will EPA increase technical assistance for QAP development, especially for programs like indoor air that do not have guidance documents? That is a great question. There is an indoor air guidance that that is currently being used, but I would love to increase technical assistance. That is what I feel like is a major part of my office's work. Unfortunately, I am extremely under-resourced. I only have 7 reviewers at the moment. And in my office, we do every single QA document that comes through the region through a grant. And then also all of our internal QAPs, we review every single one of those. It is my goal to increase training efforts. There is an agency-wide goal to increase training efforts. However, I I just don't have the resources to do additional technical assistance at the moment based upon my resources. However, if you submit a QAP to me or to my group, we will reach out to you individually. We will provide comments. We will make sure that it is technically astute and meets your goals. And through that, it's almost like one-on-one individual training. But actually having, especially right now when we're not in the office, having additional technical or training programs is not something that I have the resources for right now. The national program is looking into it. And since you brought that up, Betty, I have another poll that I would love to send out. And then I will get to the other questions because I saw Lisa had one. Let's see. Here it is. Here's the poll. And it's about what kind of training do you guys need? So I need more training in the following, QA requirements and what triggers the need for a QAP, developing your data quality objectives, because that seems to be a big one, or understanding monitoring techniques and or writing SOPs. Sometimes that's a difficult one, especially as you're doing succession planning. So I'm going to go ahead and have you guys fill out that poll because I would be interested in seeing what you guys say about that. And then I'm going to go back to the chat. Before I close that, I'm going to go to Lisa's question. Should we put QAP development or QA revisions in all our grant applications? Definitely put QAP development or QAP revisions in any grant in which so a QAP sunsets in 5 years. So for, let's say, the Clean Water Act 106 program, usually that's a baseline monitoring program. And so not a lot changes in 5 years. However, if you anticipate that there are new constituents of concern, or if you want to expand your monitoring program, and you can see that that's going to happen within 3 years instead of 5, then yes, plan ahead, put it in your work plans. I know it is expensive. It's a resource intensive work product to churn out, especially when you guys are feeling the pain like I am and we're all under-resourced. So I highly suggest that if you know you're going to be doing any kind of environmental information collection, then yes, you should be putting it under a work plan for that pertinent program. I think that should answer Lisa's question. I highly encourage that. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. It looks like it's actually very even. 30%, 36% of you said that you want to know more about EPA's requirements and what triggers the need for a QAP. 36 said developing data quality objectives, which I'm really hoping to do a training on this year. That's one of my goals for fiscal year 22. And then also understanding monitoring techniques and or writing SOPs. I can understand why that would be all pretty even. Let's see in the chat. Leroy, we have issues with resources. Our current QAP renewal review is asking us to implement QA independence and additional data reviews, 3 levels of review. This is an additional experienced staffing, a minimum of at least 3 personnel to perform regulatory monitoring. Please provide recommendations. So Leroy, I believe this is a part of, so there is limited funding. I understand that. And is this part of air regulatory monitoring, a PQAO? And I know you can't answer me back, but my guess is it is. Unfortunately, PQAOs have a much higher bar that they need to reach regarding QA independence. That is a requirement stated within the statute and the regulations for collecting data on behalf of EPA. So QA, while I understand that that is an additional burden on the tribe, because it does take personnel to one, have separate line of independence from the monitoring that is actually being, taken, being collected. But two, definitely having the 3-tier data validation. I feel your pain. I understand it. Unfortunately, it is a requirement for taking on that program. I believe we're working with you. I can certainly talk to you offline. It's unfortunate that we don't have the funding. Unfortunately, we are completely separated. Again, like you, we have to be completely independent of any data collection. So my group is in a support division. We are not within a program office so that we can oversee the quality system. We are completely independent from, any kind of collection that's happening within Region 9. And so I really do feel your pain. And if you need to talk more about it with me, my information is going to be at the end of this slide, and you can definitely reach out to me and we can discuss more. Okay. So I'm going to move on because I'm sure you're tired of looking at the dominoes. So the next steps, like I said, there's a domino effect. We are currently updating the guidances, and because we are housed, our national program manager is housed under the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. We have a little bit different format for guidances, or what we used to call guidances, than what you are used to. So we're actually updating guidances to standards. And so we are currently revising. Well, we're revising 2 of the 3 that are listed, but the goal is to revise all 3 of those listed QA documents. The first one being R2, or the requirements for the quality management plans. The second one, and one that you guys are probably most familiar with, is R5, and that is the requirements for the quality assurance project plans. G5, which actually provides a little bit more detail about everything that goes into a QAP, will remain a guidance. But we won't begin work on that until next year, early next year. So we expect to go through updating that particular document sometime February 22. We just completed, or I should say the National Program Office just completed, a robust outreach and communications plan to get input from state and tribes on draft documents. There was a participant and volunteer request that went out in August 2021. It began with a message from Beth Jackson, and then I believe worked its way through the Region 9 RTOC, and we do have a number of tribes that have participated on the listening sessions and on the draft document discussions. Right here, I show a graphic of where they are within this kind of new system. We have to get approval before we can publish a final document. We're right now in pre-clearance. Agency review is concurrently happening. I have to get my comments in about both of the standards on November 4th. You guys have a little bit more time, and both states and tribes can provide comments until November 10th. Now, I believe the only people who can provide comments are those who volunteered to be a part of the listening sessions. However, if you have the real desire to look at both the QMP and QAP standards as they are being developed, and you want to participate and communicate your thoughts around those standards, those comments are due November 10th. And you can certainly reach out to Linda Himmelbauer, who is the point of contact for updating these requirements. Linda is great. She was formerly the Region 8 Regional Quality Assurance Manager. She has worked with tribes, states, has an excellent background. I'm so glad that they brought somebody in from the regions to be able to assist the national program in developing these. I think, we have a little bit more understanding of your resource constraints and everything else that you're going through. And honestly, the standards are going to lie on her desk to actually be drafted and updated. And Dana, I see a question from you. Can you explain the difference between guidance and standard? So that's the interesting thing. There is no difference. It's just literally because we come out of almost the information and technology sector of the agency. For some odd reason, I think it's part of our, QA independence, making sure that we are overseeing the quality system from afar and separated from any kind of monitoring. That it is just literally a change of two words. So guidance is what we have been used to and what we are used to seeing under the various media programs. In the ITIM world that we fall under our national program managers, it is called a standard. So there really isn't any difference between guidance and standard. It's just essentially, both are going to describe kind of what are the criteria that EPA needs to see in order to approve a QAP or a QMP. Does that help, Dana? It was very confusing to me too, just so you know. Okay. Let's see. So again, unfortunately, under this program, we can't have that, direct interaction that we can kind of get usually, at least in a virtual kind of manner. But if you have any additional questions, certainly write them in the in the chat, sorry. And I see that Tiffany just put something up, but I'm going to have one more poll. And this has to do with our RTalk QA work group. I'm just wondering how often you want to see us at an RTalk. And so I'm going to launch a poll to get a little bit of an idea. Certainly I commit to any time, I would love to get the work group together and make sure I present to the RTalk whenever there's new information. But I want to see if we're hitting all the right buttons as far as hearing from me. Too often, too little. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll, and then I will answer Tiffany's question while that's running. Okay, so let me go back to the chat. Tiffany, hi Audrey, just a quick question. Are there tribal air programs collecting data on behalf of EPA? What document does it outline this? Thanks. So yes, there is, so there are tribes. We have 4 tribal air programs that are collecting data, regulatory data, on which EPA uses to make decisions. And so that document is listed in 40 CFR 35, I believe. But anyways, what you need is the biggest hurdle for collecting regulatory data is that, one, you have to develop a QMP. You have to show that you can be identified as a primary quality assurance organization, which means you have to show QA independence. You have to show the ability to conduct audits. Once you are a PQAO, we conduct an audit on your program called a technical systems audit every 3 years. It's a collaborative audit in which we kind of identify ways that your program can improve. There's a variety of, you could have a regulatory program on PM 2.5, ozone. And like I said, there are four tribes within Region 9 that have been identified as a PQAO. The first hurdle, again, is developing a QMP. The second hurdle is working with the Air Division to determine if the monitoring network that you set up makes sense within our overall region. It's all about monitoring design and whether or not we need that data collected in order to make regulatory decisions. So there's a lot of different things that have to go on. It takes many years usually for any organization to become a PQAO. And so if you have any other questions about that, Tiffany, certainly, you can talk to me. The person that I work with closely on the TSA audits and who usually, who works with the PQAOs is the Air Quality and Analysis Office, and that manager is Gwen Yoshimura. And certainly, if you want to discuss that, we are open to any questions that you may have about that. Okay, Lisa. Has EPA thought about putting quality assurance type requirements for collaboration consultation with the tribes? Oh, that's great, Tiffany. Thank you. I'm sorry, I should have recognized your name after we just conducted the TSA. There's so many people that we see over the course of a year. Yeah, so clarification on the mission is definitely you're conducting it on behalf of EPA, but certainly for your tribe as well. Yes, and Roberto is right. That's also a part of, having being a PQAO is having data uploaded into AQS, which is a public-facing data system, which allows us to glean information from it. Let me go back. I'm sorry. Lisa, has EPA thought about putting quality assurance type requirements for collaboration consultation with tribes? I think that is an excellent thought, Lisa. I will tell you that every single time our national program managers bring up something, we are always stating, or at least, the Western regions that have a lot of tribes are always talking about collaboration and consultation with our tribes when it comes to our programs. And I think that's why they did the kind of robust communication outreach that they have on the standards. But I think that is an excellent idea, and I think that's something that should be brought up. Okay. And it looks like we've come to the end of our time. I do have, let's see how the poll went. So 50-50. Every RTalk meeting and then just annual conference, and then skip one time and go to spring RTalk. Oh, it just updated. Okay, well, I will certainly take that into consideration. I am still looking for a tribal partner to help me run the RTalk work group. So if you are at all interested, I would love to hear from you. Again, I know it's not an easy job. I know you guys all have a lot on your plates. But certainly I don't want to run the work group alone. I think I need somebody to help me out in the tribal world to help me kind of identify what's needed and what would be helpful to you. So I appreciate the time that you guys have spent with me this afternoon. I'm sure you're all tired of looking at your screens. And let me know. Oh, I'm sorry. I have one more question from Eddie. QA independence is a major challenge for most tribes. How does EPA plan to assist tribes attain this in the future? Excellent question. It's something we struggle with too. Unfortunately, I think for the most part, we try to be as creative as we can to help you kind of develop QA independence. Usually in our comments back, we do identify, a way for, either neighboring tribes, which I know isn't popular all the time, but neighboring tribes to help you out with maintaining QA independence. Maybe somebody from cross-training of somebody else within another program. Let's say somebody works solely in Clean Water Act water and can look at data and provides part of that tiered review. That's something that we have accepted in the past. We understand the resource constraints. It is something that, it's especially comes up in the air monitoring program because of the requirements around PQAOs. And unfortunately, there's nothing that I can provide as the QA office, because we do not provide training, or we do not provide any kind of monetary resources to help you with achieving QA independence. We don't have the ability to grant funds in order to make that happen. So it is something that we struggle with, but I also think that we do a pretty good job in trying to be creative so that you can continue to run your program. If you have other suggestions for ways that we can be creative and still maintain the QA requirements, I am all ears. But I do think that we provide some comments that try to help you out in that sector, knowing that resources are tight. Okay, and Lisa, that's right. Leonard's going to be jumping on board. Thank you for reminding me. Leonard, I'm excited to have you if you're on. And I love how Lisa just voluntold Tiffany that maybe she can do a QA work group with me. Tiffany, you don't need to if you don't want to, but I love that Lisa's already throwing names out there. Anything else that anybody has? I don't want to keep you past the time, but I'm more than happy to stick around for 5 more minutes if people have any other questions. Okay, well, with that, I appreciate you guys sticking around for a little over 50 minutes. I look forward, I miss seeing your guys' faces and having some interpersonal kind of way to see your face and talk to you. But I hope you're all enjoying the conference, and maybe cross our fingers next year we can be together in person. So anyways, I really appreciate everybody helping me out, Mark. I appreciate everybody who attended this meeting, and I look forward to further discussions with you. So thank you all.